Hello, we are Niek and Liam, and we have done research about resistance in the Netherlands. Our research question is, how did the Dutch resistance develop, and especially in het gooi during 1940 to 1945? I will start with the presentation, and Liam will take it over in 5 minutes. We have made sub-questions to make our research question easier. Our global context. We have chosen orientation in space and time, and we have chosen this global context because we want to research how the Dutch resistance developed and when did that happen. And we also want to research what important things happened for the Dutch resistance and where and when did this happen. Our success criteria. We have made 5 strands with and in this success criteria is explained what you need to do for every level. This is one of our sub-questions, and on every slide there is a question, and that's our sub-question. So when did resistance started? The invasion of Nazi Germany started in May 1940. Many Dutch people had to make choices. Even before the capitulation of the Netherlands, Queen Wilhelmina and her government fled to England. And this is Queen Wilhelmina. A lot of Dutch people were left defeated and even disappointed because their queen left their country. And because the Germans only occupied the Netherlands and didn't yet have strict rules, only a small group of people started resisting. Because the Nazis hated communism, the Communistische Partij Nederland, went underground immediately after the capitulation. And this is the logo of Communistische Partij Nederland. Very fast after the capitulation, it turned out that the Germans strongly manipulated the news in the Netherlands. Because of that, the Dutch people spread more reliable information through illegal pamphlets and resistance newspapers, such as Het Parool. And this is a pamphlet, and pamphlets were used to tell people secretly about the current topic on printed papers. And this is a part of the pamphlet about the speech of Queen Wilhelmina on Radio Oranje in June 24 in 1941. And Radio Oranje was a program that the British BBC broadcasted during the war. But listening to this program was forbidden, and from May 1943 the Germans even forbid the having of a radio device because many Dutch people used a radio secretly. A month after the occupation, the Dutch people expressed their dissatisfaction about the occupation on a large scale for the first time. They did this on Prince Bernhard's birthday, and as a tribute, some of the Dutch people wore white carnations in the buttonhole of their jackets. This day is known as Anjerdag, but the Germans were surprised about this day, but immediately did something about this non-violent resistance. Why was there resistance? The mood in the Netherlands changed in the summer of 1940. The Nazis introduced the first anti-Jewish measures, and also the first arrest of Jewish people took place on February 23 in 1941. After a raid, nearly 400 Amsterdam Jewish people disappeared to the concentration camp Mauthausen. With pamphlets, the communist resistance asked the Dutch people to strike. And this is the pamphlet in which they asked people to strike. And 2 days after the raid, 10,000 of Dutch people, mostly people from Amsterdam, Weesp and Hilversum, stopped their work in protest. This strike is called the Februari-staking and lasted for 2 days. And here you see people striking. On the second day, the Germans reacted very strictly. They shot 9 strikers in the streets of Amsterdam and arrested 200 people. What did the resistance do? The Dutch resistance had different ways to resist. They did espionage, repatriation, sabotage, and the killing of Germans and NSB'ers. Resistance groups gathered information about the Germans in the Netherlands and elsewhere. They did this to provide Allied forces with information from within the occupied territories. They also helped crews of Allied aircraft because it was important to prevent the crews of shot-down Allied aircraft from falling into the hands of the Germans. After D-Day, this is the landing in Normandy, and also after the liberation of the southern part of the Netherlands, the resistance groups, under leadership of Prince Bernhard, began to sabotage the railroads and other infrastructures. They did this to limit the activities of the Germans. There was also resistance in Hilversum, and they built a network which they used to contact other parts of the Netherlands. This network was built in the Noorderkerk in Hilversum, and this is the Noorderkerk in Hilversum. Now Liam will tell more about who the resistance was, and also he will tell about the resistance in het gooi.
Who were the resistance? The resistance was divided in a lot of groups and they did all other work. There was a group called Group Doop and they did a lot of things in Naarden and Bussum. This organization was established by Theo Doop. Theo Doop was killed by CSRVC Dienst. This was the German police. Also other organizations started working together, for example the communist organizations CPN and RSAP. They were especially against the anti-Jewish measures because a lot of members had a Jewish background. One of the first resistance fighters in the Netherlands was Bernardus IJzerdraad. In the early days of the war, the resistance was still on a small scale. Then, on March 13, 1941, 18 members of the resistance, including Bernardus IJzerdraad, were executed. It became clear to the Germans that the Germans didn't tolerate the resistance and were prepared to use force. I would like to tell a story about Pia van der Molen. She has a story about how she saved her dad. It was 1944. My parents and my little brother herself lived in Huizen. I was around the age of 4 and I was sitting on the kitchen in the chair because my leg was burned. My mother accidentally spilled cooking water because she tripped over the carpet. And I got water all over my legs because I was playing on the kitchen floor. My mom tried to solve it, so she put my leg in the tap with cold water. She took off my socks, but because she took off my socks, she also took off some skin. I couldn't walk for a long time and I had a special place in the kitchen on a chair with my legs straight on a stool. I can still remember my grandpa coming in the house with the shocking news. The Germans were looking for my dad. I can remember my mom pulling up the carpet under the kitchen floor and she opened up a hatch. My dad went in the hatch and my mother pulled the carpet back on the kitchen floor and put me with my chair exactly above the hatch where my dad disappeared into. Almost a minute later, the Germans came with force into the house, through the front and the back door. They pushed the mom on side and they were immediately intimidating and brutal. They threw things all over and they saw me sitting on the chair. And they came directly to me with their weapons aimed at me. Then one of them asked me, "Who is dein Vati?" Because my parents were in the resistance and did all kinds of things like Jewish photograph and help people hiding. My mother knew this was going to happen someday. That's why she told me to say, "My Vati is in Deutschland." And that was what I told them. But things didn't go more calm. The Germans shot everywhere in the kitchen floor. That's not what I was scared of the most. Then they asked my mother what happened to my legs. My mom replied, "Yeah, my child has TBC and on her legs." That was without the best answer my mother could give. The Germans were scared and ran off because TBC is very contagious, and they never saw it again. Now, many years later, as I remember everything that happened, I think my mother knew that 1,000 people had to die. I'm I'm lucky that my mother taught me that one sentence that I had to say in German, but I never imagined that I had to use it. Conclusion. So we came to a conclusion that the resistance in the Netherlands in the Second World War became stronger through time. The sooner people started noticing that the German forces became weaker, the Dutch resistance got somewhat hope. In the end, the Dutch resistance ended up having 45,000 members that helped in the war. In honor of the 2,000 people that died or were executed, 2,000 trees were planted as a forest. This forest is called Bos der Onverzettelijkheden. The bibliography of the sources that we used. We used a lot of sources because of the information we all had to search of. Our video will be posted on a YouTube site with the presentation that we had of this PowerPoint.
Thank you for watching this presentation.